From New York Times Opinion, I'm Lulu Garcia Navarro, and this is First Person. So at the end of the week, my smartphone tells me how much time I spent on it each day. And I never fail to be shocked and horrified by the tally. 6 hours, 7 hours? I mean, really? What was I doing for all that time? It's a kind of fog. And I sometimes wonder what life would look like if I just got rid of my phone. 17-year-old Logan Lane did just that. She's a high school senior and she grew up in Brooklyn, but also on the internet, as kids do in our technology-saturated world. Then, a little over 2 years ago, Logan started questioning whether living a life of constant connection was actually a good thing. And she made a dramatic decision to ditch her smartphone. Then she started a club to try and convince her peers to do the same. The aftermath has been surprising, both to her and to me. Today on First Person, Logan Lane unplugs. Hi, Logan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. Are you nervous?
A little bit.
I can tell. Don't feel nervous. I am gonna turn off my camera. I just wanted you to see me first so you can put a face to the voice, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Great. So here we go. Can you tell me about how you got your own smartphone? How old were you?
I think I was, I remember I first got a flip phone in 5th grade, but I believe I got a smartphone in 6th grade, so I was about 11. I remember being just so excited. I think right when I first got a phone, I also got Instagram for the first time, and I was very excited about it.
I guess around 11, it's pretty normal now for kids to get smartphones. Did your online habits change once you were able to have this device in your pocket?
So, I mean, I think it introduced the aspect of like falling asleep with my phone by my side. I could never do that with a computer because it was a desktop, but so now I could have it on demand at all times. And so I had complete control over it. And I think my, immediate impulse was to, use it all the time. And so I was always, like texting my 11-year-old friends and mindlessly scrolling.
Did it shift your sort of social group when everyone started to get smartphones and use social media? I mean, did it change the way your friends interacted with each other?
It introduced this whole new world of people to me who had gone to a different elementary school. And interestingly enough, there kind of like became this popular group that arose on Instagram. It wasn't in real life, and it wasn't people that I knew or would have known if I wasn't on Instagram. And I definitely really looked up to them. And I heard this rumor that 5 or 6 girls from like a bunch of different elementary schools, they reached out to each other in this big Instagram group chat. And they were like, we are going to be the popular girls at school.
How does that work? Do you think, to sort of decide on social media to become popular?
I feel like it was people who were sort of pretty first, really early on in 6th and 7th grade. It was the people who had boyfriends first and who dressed well.
So they were kind of Instagram ready, if you will.
Totally.
Yeah. And what did it, what did it feel like for you to be watching your peers, essentially, that you might not have had access to before, become really cool? Like, how did that impact you and your friend group?
I just felt really weird in comparison to them. And a part of me really wanted to like emulate this aspect of popularity. But then another part of me was like totally against it. Oh, like I don't care about popularity. I don't know. I was like, it felt like I went to this like reality high that did not exist.
And can you describe to me what you were like when you were on Instagram? Like, what was your social media presence?
So I was always kind of rejecting Instagram, and I would overpost, like posting. I remember in 7th or 8th grade, like posting like literally 10 or 11 kind of weird, like not flattering selfies on my story, on my Instagram story, and kind of like rejecting the flattering
Artifice.
aspects of Instagram.
Yeah.
Yet, I was still going on it, which was weird because I was like over posting. It was this thing called casual Instagram where we'd post whatever and seemingly not care, but you were still posting. So I put off this persona of not caring.
So like too cool to care.
Totally, yeah.
After you got your smartphone, I mean, were there ever stretches of time when you didn't have it? Or once you had it, was it just attached to you?
So when I was in 7th grade, I lost my phone. I think I left it on the bus. And so I had a good 4 months without a phone. And it was really, really nice for me. And interestingly enough, it was during this period that I first started kind of rejecting Instagram. And my best friend at the time and I would give her my password and she would change it. And so I couldn't go on Instagram for a week or a couple weeks or so. And then another strategy I used is I would temporarily deactivate my Instagram account. And sometimes I just remember temporarily deactivating it, being like, oh my God, I just want to go on Instagram. Like, why did I do this? One moment being completely, completely anti-Instagram and ready to never see it again. And then what was so embarrassing was that I wanted it back very soon after.
Mm-hmm. What happens when you get into high school? Did things change at that point?
So it felt like my life totally transformed when I went to high school because all of a sudden I went to a huge high school with 4,000 kids in it. And a lot of the kids had gone to this other middle school that I was constantly looking at on social media. And it was like this reality high that I built was finally in person. And part of me was really excited, but I felt like I was always acting. I was like being this person on social media, and then in person at school, I had to emulate that because people were actually seeing me. And I really carried on this I don't care persona at this time. Like I remember posting pictures of like my feet in the bathtub or like just really weird, unflattering things to kind of gross people out. Maybe I was like, part of me was like making fun of Instagram, but I this was the period I feel like where I cared the most, interestingly enough.
Before you were in this kind of more closed-in environment, but now you're like in the big world of high school where all of a sudden everyone can see you and who you are.
Yeah. I get on the train to school, and getting on the train to school is like everyone from the school takes the same train because it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And that always felt like it was like the runway. Being on the train before school was like the runway, and it was like the social media in-person collision because all of a sudden you see everyone from school in this one like concentrated environment. You won't necessarily see them in all your classes, but you definitely will on the train in the morning.
And what's everyone doing? Is everyone staring at their phone looking at what everyone else has posted?
Yeah. Yes.
What was your life when you weren't online?
So I did a lot of painting at this time. I remember like staying up one of these times that I pulled an all-nighter and stayed up all night. I did like a self-portrait of me and some mushrooms, which I look back at and hate now. But I crocheted also. But no matter what I did, like it was all to support this social media presence. And I posted so much of my art online. Like if I did something that I was proud of, I would 100% post it. If I sewed something or knitted something that I liked, I would post it and be like, look at this cool thing I made. And I would get some sort of approval that really felt good. But it was almost like I did it knowing that I was going to post it later on.
You talked about a period when you lost your phone and having this on again, off again relationship with Instagram and other social media chats. When did you start to really worry about how much time you were spending on your phone once you hit high school?
It was in the start of the pandemic. I had like unlimited access, and I, for the first time, felt like I could be on my screens 24 hours a day. All of my school was online, and During all my classes, I would be using my phone.
I said I would do a Q&A when I hit 20 million, so here we go.
After my classes, I would be using my phone.
This is called the beauty effect, and it just makes your face
I saw for the first time what it was like to be completely unleashed into the online world.
I am 17 years old, in my backyard, covering my body in glitter. That is a goal achieved.
Video, big thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Just let me know down in the comments. Bye, guys!
And it was honestly really depressing.
Just to ask you a question about the before and after this moment, what were the physical effects of being on your phone all the time? Can you describe those?
So physically, I could not sleep. My sleep schedule was terrible. It was not regulated, and I would stay up late most nights. I also developed like this indent on my fingers where I would be holding my phone because I was just so frequently scrolling with my hands in a particular position that my fingers started shifting. And I think the rest of it's pretty it's like all more emotional than physical. But to go into that, like I was just blatantly unsatisfied with myself. I was constantly seeing something better that I could be, someone prettier, someone more artistic. And I developed this level of shame about who I wasn't.
Mm-hmm. And what was going on for you that led you to think about getting rid of your phone?
I think it came to a head at me examining the time trade. Because when I started to realize that the pandemic was going to be a longer thing than I had initially expected, I would see like other people, doing reading challenges or knitting, just like using the extra time for some artistic activity. And I felt like I was the type of person who ought to be doing that, but I wasn't. I was wasting it on TikTok or Instagram. I felt for myself, if I was going to be productive, I needed to take a step back from the phone.
Take me to the moment when you're like, actually, yeah, this isn't working.
So I don't remember what was going through my head, but I kind of made this like grand walk of shame down the stairs to my parents' room. And I remember calling to my dad in the room, like, I'm really doing it. I'm never using my phone again. And I powered it off and I put it in this drawer in my parents' room. And my dad was making fun of me. He was like, there's no way this is gonna last. Like, you're gonna go back to it in a couple days. And a part of me really wanted to prove him wrong because while I knew I was this super screen addicted teenager, I wanted to be different. I wanted to use all my time productively and to make something. And so even if I wasn't doing it at the time, like I had those ambitions. And so inevitably I just kept up with it.
So you put your phone in a box. What did that actually mean, though? I mean, for example, could you still text your friends? Did you access the internet on a computer? Like, what did that look like?
So I still had an Apple computer at the time. So I still had an iCloud account. While I was still able to text, there was a difference between, being able to text and being completely plugged in on social media. So
you turned off your social media at the same time.
Yeah. So I deactivated Instagram, TikTok, and then I permanently deactivated my Snapchat account as well.
That's a huge life change.
Yeah.
Was part of you scared about how it would go?
I guess a part of me, like, even from the beginning, felt like the major thing was I was going to lose friends. I was going to lose, these connections I had built with people online. But I also felt like if they didn't stay, if people weren't willing to stay in touch with me over email or over my iCloud, then I didn't want anything to do with them. So I was pretty quick to reject anyone who didn't like support or want to stay in touch with me, even though it was a little bit more difficult for them.
I mean, did that happen?
Definitely.
Talk me through what the fallout was.
People kind of started to describe me as like Logan fell off the face of the earth. Like I would run into them and they'd be like, oh my God, like I haven't seen you in so long. I'd be like, yeah, like I got a flip phone. And it was really weird because I felt like I totally changed. And so on one hand, I wasn't connected with people, but then when I would run into them again, it was like I was a totally different person. And the person that they had met was someone who was really plugged in, and maybe they liked that about me, and I wasn't anymore.
I'm interested in this idea of like Logan fell off the face of the earth because you're no longer on these social media accounts. It's like a social death almost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you're suddenly in a world where the internet is not with you everywhere. And I think life without a smartphone is something a lot of us have fantasized about. I mean, I certainly have. And actually, it's kind of hard to imagine what that looks like. Can you walk me through what those early days without a phone look like?
So I woke up early. I started waking up early. And I guess that was just like a side effect of not falling asleep with a phone next to me, like into the late hours of the night. So I woke up and I would make some coffee, and then I would have to get on my Zooms for school. And one thing that changed was I wasn't multitasking while I was in the Zooms. Like I wasn't distracted. And so rather than, scroll on Instagram during the Zooms, I started like knitting and crocheting during my Zoom calls. So it was like I replaced it in a sense. And then let's say school ends around 12, 1, 2. And I do feel I started to like think more about, I've never been very good about like feeding myself, but I started to think more about food and like, okay, like now I actually have to eat lunch. Like I can't just have some snack. And then I would have like 5-6 hours to kill before dinner. And I would be actually excited about having dinner with my family, which I wasn't before because I was like, this is just taking away from my screen time. I think at this time I really started making my own pants. And so I started like doing this thing of merging 2 pairs of pants where I would like cut out these triangles and just like patch them together. And I got really into that. But I also, I started reading. And so maybe I would spend the afternoon reading or doing some sort of art project.
What were you reading?
So the first book I read was Collages by Anais Nin. And to this day, like that book blows me away.
Great book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so appreciative of that book because it like really, really got me into reading. I'd always wanted to be a reader, but I just wasn't. And for the first time, like I found something that could engage me more than, watching TV could.
The way you're describing this, it sounds like it was mostly really positive. Was there anything that was hard to adjust to?
I was really lonely. And so it was hard to find people to talk to. I guess I could still FaceTime, but I think I was really only talking to one person. I honestly, like, I was much more extroverted before this whole experiment, but I kind of grew more introverted as a result. And I started to feel less like I needed people. Less needed people's approval. I less needed people's company. And I think I closed my circle a little bit more, which ended up being really positive because I felt like I could focus more on my friendships and be really intentional about who I let stay in my life.
After the break, Logan starts the Luddite Club. So you've transformed your life during the pandemic to get rid of your phone. All of a sudden, you are having essentially a burst of creativity. You're also engaging in reading in your school. You're enjoying actually having meals with your family, and you're sleeping better. How did this turn into something bigger? How did you end up spreading the no phone gospel to other teens through what you call the Luddite Club? Take me back to how it started.
So we first went back to school in 2021, in September, October of 2021. And that was really great for me. I was super excited to be back at school. And it was almost as if I relived my initial freshman year, except completely transformed. And I was seeing all these people that I had known on social media and whatnot, and I was seeing them in a different light.
When you're saying you're seeing these people that you had followed and admired on Instagram before in a different light now that you had stopped using your phone, can you tell me what that meant?
I lost a lot of respect for them. I had like sort of put them on a pedestal before, whereas I almost like they sort of fell down a notch. I was like, wow, this person is not that cool.
So you're back at school. Take me back to the club. I mean, what is the club's origin story?
So I had heard about a punk show in Prospect Park that was happening one weekend. A couple of bands, like Disaster Nurse and the Cut Ups played, and I really enjoyed it. And I ran into someone who was on the cross country team, which I was the captain of at the time. And she introduced me to one of her good friends who had a flip phone. And I was like totally blown away. I was like, oh my God, I have been waiting to run into a person like this for the longest time. Finally, here's someone who feels the same way about me as me and is pursuing this lifestyle the same way as I. And we immediately hit it off. We ended up going to this after party together afterwards and really bonded. She was a freshman, but she was so well read. And I almost saw like she was who I could have been in an alternate universe freshman year if I hadn't been on my phone, hadn't been on social media. And she was this really amazing person, but I didn't get any of her contact information. I didn't get her email. I didn't get anything. But a couple weeks later, I was walking around the Central Library. This is like the big library in Brooklyn. And I ran into her again. And I was so excited to see her again. And we ended up, walking around the art and music section of the library. And then later we walked through, it was a Saturday, so we walked through the farmer's market and got apples and apple cider donuts.
This seems like this is really vivid for you.
Oh, yeah. And turns out she has been wanting to meet someone just like me the same way. And, it just came over us that we wanted to start some sort of club where we could do just what we had done that day. So I got her email and we decided to meet the next Sunday. And I think I came back that Sunday after having talked to my mom. My mom was the one who came up with the term Luddite Club. Like she just introduced me of what the term meant. And so we had our second meeting.
So your mom gives you the name the Luddite Club. For people who may not know what it is, can you tell me what it is?
So Luddite is a person who rejects technology. There's a lot of different forms, and throughout history there's been different variations of it. But to me now it means, rejecting social media, rejecting phones, rejecting this sort of personal machine that has plagued all of us.
So at first it was just the two of you, and you come up with this idea to just have a lovely day like you did then and have a regular meetup. How often did you end up meeting and where?
So we met every Sunday, then onwards, and it quickly became this sort of group. And partly like being a Luddite felt really lonely, and it was so great to go connect with people, and particularly people who felt the same way about screens, and who like sort of lived the same lifestyle every single week at a certain time.
You've been meeting with the club for a little over a year now. Walk me through a typical meeting of the Luddite Club.
Needless to say, oh, that's V. Hi, V.
Like, how many people show up? How do you spend your time? Just kind of take me through it.
Do you know about...
So Luddites are frequently late, which personally is a pet peeve of mine.
Speaking of which, where is Clem?
Yeah.
It's approaching 2:26.
Probably with Devin.
I know, but we saw him on the walk over.
Oh, really?
By the way, I'm sorry.
And then finally we have everyone arrive. Usually it can range anywhere from like 4 to in what we call the off season, which is like the summertime, 4 to like 15 people. And then whenever we feel everyone has arrived,
all right, like you snooze, you lose, people know they can.
We go into the park, Prospect Park. There's an entrance right near the library.
I've been enjoying that.
Yeah, so.
Do seniors take?
We have like a special meeting place, so we go.
You can if
We all go and we sit in a circle.
English regions, right?
In June.
I don't know, that's all they're doing.
I got 98.
The Luddite Club, as I think like one of the members described to me once, is like it's a combination of a bunch of conversations.
If you like fail
The juniors at my school are taking the English region.
You talk to someone about how they're doing, and then you start talking about how you feel about a book.
Okay, so it's basically like this theory that everything that will happen has already been set in place. Like fate, basically.
And then you start talking about how someone's feeling about being in school and how everyone makes fun of them for having a flip phone.
But I don't know, I haven't gone back to my phone. Like I turned it off and it's been off.
So it's like a sort of interweaving conversations.
I'd like to decide.
Usually it's like an hour to 2 hours. Sometimes it leads into other things. Like this one time we went to the beach. Another time we went to our friend's pool. Another time we went to a Jeffrey Lewis concert. That was the longest Luddite Club. It was 12 hours long.
I had a iPad and
you had Snapchat in like the fourth grade.
Yeah, I had everything.
And
it was like I was
really it's just like a group of friends talking.
But it did make me like kind of not have any interest for a few years.
And all the while people are painting, people are sewing and drawing, and just kind of existing in nature for a little bit.
Happen in your life that like changes things.
Yeah, what if someone does something to you and you react? You can't just like, what if you are like, I'm gonna react differently this time, and then you change your molecules.
How do your molecules change?
Do people show up who are skeptical?
Everyone who comes like starts off as like a skeptical member. And they sort of hear the gospel for a little bit. Some stay, some don't. And eventually, like for people who end up staying, they come back next week and they're like, wow, I've been really thinking about what we talked about last week, and like I really want to make this big change in my life, or I've decided to get off social media, or I'm really trying to convince my parents to let me get a flip phone. And first Odile got a flip phone, and then Lola did, and Baruch did, then Max did, then Yona did. And so every few weeks, these people would come back and they'd be like, look what I got. And we would just continue on. We'd keep having conversations, keep drawing. And yeah.
Has anyone ever tried out the Luddite lifestyle and then gone back?
Yes. So interestingly enough, one of the first members, she was a Luddite for a little bit. She never got a flip phone. She just had an iPhone. But then I think she got a boyfriend and she went back on Instagram.
What was that like for you?
It was really sad. I really miss her coming to Luddite Club. But I also feel like, people have the right to make their own decisions. If that lifestyle works for her, that's awesome. And so I do feel like upset about it. But she's young, like she's a sophomore now. And maybe she still has time to see, or maybe she doesn't. Maybe she's like has an okay relationship with technology, unlike all of us. You know what I mean?
Can you just tell me how the friendships that you've made in the Luddite Club are different from the way your friendships were before?
Yeah, so the people I know in the Luddite Club, the way that I see them and the knowledge I have of them is completely offline. There's no premeditated Instagram knowledge, and there's no me knowing things about them that they don't know that I know. So they share what they want to share, etc. And I think it's also made me more appreciative of attendance. I really like when people show up. And so for the friends that show up, I value that heavily. And the thing about the Luddite Club is people show up, and they show up every week. And it's made me more appreciative of the physical act of showing up somewhere for someone.
You said earlier that often when people come to the club, they hear the gospel. Is this just something fun you do with your friends because it feels good and it's nice to spend time together? Or does it feel like something bigger than that, a movement?
So I think this is definitely something I've been thinking about. I think the unplugging and the getting offline is 100% something bigger and something that hopefully this generation will take on, particularly as we become parents. I know, I have some regrets about how early I got my phone and how early this addiction was instilled in me. And I can hope that my generation as parents will be able to better manage our kids and, give them technology at appropriate ages, unlike the super young ages that I and my peers have gotten them.
You know, as I'm hearing you talk, I'm feeling a lot of shame. I won't lie, as a mother. Um, because we as parents do give our kids these devices, but they've become such a ubiquitous part of our lives that it's hard to separate ourselves from how we interact with our phones.
I do feel like my the restrictions, the parental restrictions, also aren't necessarily successful all the time. Like I see the exact same things that my parents implemented, which really were not that um, insane measures of restricting, did not succeed whatsoever with my brother. Um, and so maybe it's not even about what your parents do, but it's like the general feeling of the generation, how we sort of hold back technology from its reliance in our life. Maybe it's not something your parents can do for you, but like the way that you can see the device and how that is in your life, whether you're a parent or you're a kid or a teenager or whatnot.
Like you need to come to this yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair. Have you ever thought about trying to find a middle ground with your smartphone, using it more intentionally, but not getting rid of it altogether? Luddite light, if you will?
I definitely think it's possible for some people. Um, but from what I've experienced, I don't feel like it's possible for me right now. And oftentimes, like, people describe to me how they're actually really good about their smartphone and they can use it in moderation. And that is so admirable. And I really, really wish I could do it. I don't feel like with my relationship with technology that I could do it. And particularly as a teenager, I don't feel like I can do it. So for me, the Luddite light lifestyle isn't optimal, but for others, 100% it's a possibility.
How much of a purist, though, are you? I mean, because there's certain things that are much harder without a smartphone, like calling an Uber. I mean, do you end up borrowing other people's phones or have people do things for you?
So when we went to I mentioned one Luddite Club, we went to a Jeffrey Lewis show, and then it ended up being really late. It was like 12. So at that point, I just called my parents, and they called me an Uber. And so that is one thing that like I won't be able to do when I'm older, but hopefully I think as I get older, like I can try and avoid situations like that.
Do you think it's going to get harder and harder, though, as technology just invades so many different spaces in our life when you try and do that thought experiment about when you're older?
I definitely fear that. And I notice like when I go to a restaurant and the menus are completely barcoded, and I have to like look on my parents' phone. Um, I I fear that with technologies becoming more and more prominent in every aspect, that it will be more and more difficult. I don't know how I'll feel about being a Luddite in the future. I don't know what that'll mean to the job market. If I'll even be able to work. Right now, it's working for me as a 17-year-old. Maybe it won't work for me in college. I am hoping that I'll be able to be a Luddite in college. But I remember my brother actually telling me you needed like some sort of two-step verification for like logging into a school account. That there was a time when I didn't have a phone at all, and I just could not be a student in college if I didn't have that. So yeah, I do fear that there's some level of like technology completely taking over, making it not possible for me to be a Luddite and still like exist in like the working world.
Let me ask you this. Do you read a physical newspaper instead of getting news on your apps? Or do you use your computer, watch TV? I mean, how are you actually engaging in the political world?
I think I get my news mostly from my dad. My dad reads the newspaper every morning, and like at dinner, he'll give me the 411, and like I don't feel like I'm as in tune, but I think I'm more emotionally well, um, because I'm not constantly like, tuned in to what's going on in the world and what politics are happening, and you know having a sort of crisis every time something happens. As someone coming of age, being in high school during the Trump presidency, knowing every single little thing that Trump did not feel productive to me, and it would make me really upset. And I felt like while maybe I'd be more in tune if I was getting my news from Instagram. It felt like that's like I feel embarrassed to say that was my primary news outlet.
When you think back to the person you were 3 years ago, how are you different now?
I definitely feel smarter, and less or so like an intelligent sense, but like smarter in the sense that I'm more intentional about what I choose to include in my life. I definitely feel more confident. My social anxiety has gone down. I do feel like I have more of a grasp on reality, whereas I was living in a sort of fantasy world before.
Do you think you'll be a Luddite forever?
I honestly don't know. I hope so.
Why?
Because I fear what will become of the authentic me when or if I get back online. Like I fear that I'll lose a sort of part of myself. Maybe I'll lose a part of my youth, which maybe that's just growing up. But I fear losing that self in a way that I felt I lost it when I was online years ago.
And so you think that if this goes away, this part of yourself that you've discovered, that'll also go away, kind of get sucked back into the machine.
Yeah.
Logan, thank you so much. This was so great.
Thank you so much.
First Person is a production of New York Times Opinion. Please tell us what you thought of this episode. Our email is firstperson@nytimes.com, and please do leave us a review wherever you're listening. This episode was produced by Rhiannon Corby with help from Annabelle Bacon. It was edited by Stephanie Joyce and Kari Pitkin. Alex Vidukel originally wrote about the Luddite Club for The Times. Mixing by Carol Saburo and Isaac Jones. Original music by Isaac Jones, Sonia Herrero, Pat McCusker, and Carol Saburo. Fact-checking by Mary Marge Locker. The rest of the First Person team includes Olivia Natt, Wyatt Orm, Sophia Alvarez-Boyd, Derek Arthur, and Jillian Weinberger. Special thanks to Christina Samuelewski, Shannon Busta, Allison Benedict, Annie Rose Strasser, and Katie Kingsbury.